tell us a little bit about your career. I think what's interesting today is that people play such a huge role in marketing. And at the time when you were at Pepsi already, you sort of like started this whole thing working with a then unknown artist called Beyoncé. You discovered her sort of as a marketing testimonial for Pepsi. Was that like already, like, were you seeing what's happening today?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, is that pop culture marketing is nothing new, right? It has always been around. It's just that right now it has become more serious. People are taking it more seriously, you know? And so back in the day, let's say that was probably about 18 years ago or 19 years ago almost, when I had that relationship, it was really just about, you know, figuring out what was going to be hot, what was happening, what's going to happen next, and then trying to get ahead of that thing. You know, back then we were making business plans and marketing plans and strategy plans that were 5 years out. You know, if you tried to do that today, you're probably going to fail.
Okay, but,
yeah.
But it's like, what's the role of like a people brand? I mean,
yeah.
That has changed with Instagram and all these things.
Excuse me, give me one moment.
Thank you. Yeah, enjoy. I mean, did you see that coming? I mean, that was before Instagram and everything. Did you see? I mean, or like maybe you can describe like how is that changing? I mean, you're working with people brands now all the time, and Diva is a talent agency.
Yes.
Like, what do you advise our audience? Like, should every brand now have a testimonial, like an influencer? What's the general trend there?
Yeah, well, I think the thing to pay attention to is the fact that all of our brands are human. You know, sometimes we think of our brands or our companies as brick and mortar entities where, you know, no one knows what's happening behind the curtain. Well, the truth of the matter is that all of us are servicing some sort of human need, right? We're all trying to work towards something that's going to solve solution or make solutions for some issue that we have in humanity. And so we have to remember that human beings, we, communicate best with each other. And so how then do you utilize that emotion, the excitement, the joy, the anger, all of the range of emotions to then communicate the product? And most of the time, that's done best by other human beings. And so figuring out perhaps who is the best human being to translate your brand message. And by the way, they don't always have to be, you know, the most famous person in the world. It doesn't always have to be Beyoncé. But it can be someone who truly lives and breathes the brand ethos. And therefore, you're able to communicate what it is that you want to your audience.
Which brands do you see today that are doing a good job at this? Which brands do you think?
So many good brands. So many good brands.
But good advertisers in the end, or good marketing strategists.
Yeah. I mean, like, the big ones, of course, do it really well, right? Nike does a fantastic job of it, right? I mean, it's like, listen, when was the last time you, like, put on a Nike shirt and didn't feel like you could probably run a marathon? You know what I mean? Even if you're sitting on your couch doing nothing. You know, you put on that shirt, and then all of a sudden you're like, yes, I am an Olympian. You know, it's like, no, you're not. You know? Or you see the commercial, and it inspires you, you know, to feel like you can really do anything. Just recently, I saw the commercial they did with Serena Williams, who is a client of Endeavor, of WME. She's represented by the agency. And it was just so powerful. It was, you know, Serena and a lot of other women, and the tagline was about, like, you know, see what crazy can do, and then just do it, right? And as I watched it, I thought, man, like, yeah, like, go women, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we can do anything. We're the crazy ones, you know? And the amazing thing about that is that it inspires you because it gives you this aspiration. Whereas we're really talking about some sneakers and maybe some cotton on the back of your shirt, you know? And so it's really about figuring out what is the emotional connection that we're trying to make with our consumer and then playing on that emotion.
When you were at Uber, that didn't happen. You didn't have that one person associated with Uber that much. It was probably the founder at the time, right? Travis Kalanick?
Yeah.
Is the founder sometimes a good substitute?
Yes. Yes, for sure. But again, you have to be careful, right? Because in these types of days, you know, our consumers also want to see who's making the decisions behind the company, right? They're not so much as interested in, like, oh, well, is LeBron James going to be the basketball player that is going to represent the brand, Or is Travis Kalanick the one who's making the decisions and we need to know what his politics are, we need to understand what his values are, and then do we align with those values and will we use the product? Okay. You know, that's the most important thing right now. And so I think I was having a conversation last night where I talked about the fact that we're in the age of the celebrity executive, you know, where it's important for your audience and for the consumers to understand who's in the executive seats. You know, and if they are popular and if they have great values, then we better associate with those brands and we want to be a part of those brands.
So you'd advise like our audience or like the ones in charge of marketing and PR at companies to really put the CEO of even the huge corporations into more of a glamorous celebrity-like position?
Well, I would use glamorous lightly.
I mean, you're a very glamorous person from my perception.
Well, thank you very much. But I would say that, you know, it's not so much about glamour as it is about transparency. You know, so it's not so much about dressing up the CEO as something that they're not. That's the wrong thing to do, right? It's about making sure that that person's values, their objectives, the things that their vision, you know, what they want to see for the company, what they want to see in the world is coming across in authentic ways so that the end users are feeling that kind of passion.
And I mean, my personal background is performance marketing. I mean, I try to like help people get downloads and get installs or like actual stuff sold, orders, leads. What's the role of performance marketing then? And especially, what's the role of performance marketing and how efficient is it at Uber and Apple maybe? I have the feeling these companies are so huge, they don't even need to be that efficient anymore. I mean, like we in Germany talk a lot about performance and look at ROI. Is that like going down a little bit?
Oh no, I think we're actually increasing what performance marketing is not just now, but what it's going to be in the future. You know, because when I think about performance marketing, I think about CRM, I think about personalization. All of our businesses, all of our corporations require a level of intimacy with our consumer that can only be reached through performance marketing. Right? It's like I can have big brand messages, which again, like Nike, could be talking about inspiration and, you know, aspiration. But if I don't know that you are a long distance runner, right, or that you'd like to go on those 5-mile runs on Sunday, versus if you are boxing in the gym for your sort of health and wellness, or maybe you do yoga, then I'm going to have a problem selling product to you. And the only way to do that is through some sort of personalization, understanding what is happening in my daily purchases, and therefore what are my habits, and then therefore how do I sell more to you based on your habits that you spent. I mean, we talked about a lot of that at Apple, as you can imagine, you know, because the other challenge is that privacy is a conversation that we're constantly having, right? It's like how much information is too much information? What should you know about me? What should you not know about me? And the line for that keeps moving all the time. And so for me, I'm constantly trying to understand, well, what are the things, what are the expectations of our audience? What do they want us to know about them, and therefore we can service them better than if we don't know, then they're insulted that we don't know.
When did you, for yourself, consciously decide, I'll take on that role as like a stand-out marketing person? I mean, if I see your appearance here, if I see you on social media, on Instagram, you're not like what I see as an average European marketing executive. You're different.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. But I would challenge that in saying that we are all different. You know, we're all unique. And therefore, why don't we all stand up and do something a little different from the norm?
I mean, absolutely.
I mean, all these people out here, I mean, I think all 8,000 of us are such unique individuals. I wish that we could see more uniqueness in how we see leadership.
But when did you flip the switch? I mean, it takes courage, it takes like very conscious decision-making maybe to do that. And at what position, at what time in your life did you decide to do that?
Actually, it was pretty early. You know, it was probably like mid-level manager. I think I was probably somewhere at Pepsi at the time. When I realized that looking at the leadership didn't look anything like me, and that I couldn't emulate what they looked like. I couldn't emulate how they talked. I couldn't emulate how they behaved. I didn't even like the food they ate. And so I was like, well, then You know, I'm just gonna have to show up as myself and then see what happens. You know, and what I found out was that I'm pretty dope. I'm pretty amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. Applause for that. and now, I mean, but you're still probably surprised by the journey you're on now. I mean, you're like huge on Instagram. There's a TV show coming out that's featuring you. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's so funny to me. I mean, honestly, I think this age of essentially like the transparency that we're talking about, that it would garner such interest. You know, I literally, I mean, I operate my own social media. I make my own posts. I'm taking my own pictures. Like, I'm doing all of those things. And I just find it hysterical that anybody would be really interested in the things that I do every day. I'm being totally candid, you know? And so as soon as I started getting more followers and people were more interested in my life, I was like, oh, well, then I'm just going to show you more. Then here you go, you know? You can see all of it. And before you knew it, of course, you know, Hollywood came knocking, wanting to feature essentially my life, which again, I think is just really interesting given the fact that, you know, so many of us are juggling so much in our lives. You know, it's like, for me, I'm a single mom. Obviously, I'm an executive. I like to go to events. I'm very much in pop culture. I have fun friends. I like to travel. Like, there's a lot of things in my life, but I don't really think that that's super unique. It is that I like to talk about it, you know, in a way that sometimes can feel raw because I'm very transparent about it. And so we'll see what happens on TV.
You can't say more about that?
Oh, well, I mean, we're developing right now, so we're still shooting.
Is it HBO? Is it Netflix? Who's it?
Stars. The Stars Network. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, like, before we open the bar for questions, let me ask you one very basic question that I always wanted to ask, like an Apple marketing decision maker. What's the role of the stores for Apple? I mean, was that so important? Is that like the whole magic behind the Apple marketing? Is that the stores?
The stores are super magical. You know, the stores are essentially the brand come to life, is how the stores are viewed, right? It's the real life application of what you should feel when you're holding the device. So when you come into the store, you should feel like things are easy. You know, it should feel like, okay, I understand how to do this. I don't need anyone to explain to me how to go up to a console and play with a device. Or, you know, if I need help, that I sign up and I get help from someone who is a trusted, you know, resource. Like, all those things should feel very easy, and they should also feel like resources. You should come in and learn. One of the programs we launched when I was at Apple was called Today at Apple. And Angela Earnhardt, who was running Apple Retail at the time, did such a magnificent job of bringing all of the different pieces of Apple to life within the retail environment. You know, whether that meant that authors were hosted there, because I worked on everything software and entertainment, you know, so for me, it was important to have authors come in and read their books. It was important to have musicians come by and play music. You know, it was important to have filmmakers come in and talk about whatever film it was that they were writing or producing or directing or starring in before it came out. You know, to really bring it to life so that by the time that product hit the device, you were already engaging with it, and we were already bringing it to life in person.
So is that an advice that we can also take away from maybe what you've experienced, that like having a store strategy sometimes can help brands? And I mean, is it only big cities then? Is it only like the capital cities, or is it? What do you think about retail in general?
No, I think that, listen, I don't even think it's just about retail. I think it's much broader than that. I think it's experiential. You know, so it's not even just about retail. It's like, it's not just like, what can I sell as in like product to product, but am I selling my brand in a way that's going to be interesting to those who I'm trying to sell to? So experiential is actually what we should be looking at. So that, again, it's like Apple Retail was not just about how many Macs can we sell in the store. It's like, what experience are you having when you come in? And if we all concentrated more on that and made the whole conversation around our audiences more full circle, we'd see more success. So therefore, we take the online experience into experiential experiences and vice versa, and make sure that they complement each other. These are not two separate conversations. They are the same conversation. Let's just find the way to make them both work simultaneously.
All right. Guys at the bar, Yvonne, Mattes, first question.
How long have they been drinking over there at the bar?
They're sitting there last night.
Cheers. So in Bozoma, in your Twitter profile there, you have attached a tweet the quote from Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yes.
The quote says, you have to be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. That means you have to be ready to reinvent yourself every time. And I think your career is a good example to reinvent yourself. And you said, and you asked Harari half an hour ago, what we can do to trick the algorithm. And I think the algorithm, how we can trick the algorithm is that as humans, we have the freedom to reinvent ourselves. And to have the freedom as human being, we can hack the algorithm. And I think that's a good example, and that makes hope to us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very impressed that you know my Twitter pinned tweet, by the way. That's amazing. Good recall. Yeah. But you're right. I feel like, the idea of reinvention is almost revolutionary, in that somehow we've been told that we have to be static throughout our lives, that we have to remain the same, that when you change, people say, oh, well, what happened to you? Well, I feel that unless I'm constantly changing, I'm not growing and I'm not getting any better. And so absolutely, I want to burn everything up every time I go in and start anew.
Next question over there.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
You are so far away. I don't see you. You are an expert in music. Do you listen to any German bands or singers? And second question.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot.
Do you know 187
you know what?
Straßenbande maybe?
Perhaps, you know what you should do? I need a German playlist. And so I would say that if anyone's on Twitter right now, I want you to tweet me at Badass and suggest a song by an artist who's German that you think I should listen to.
All right. Okay.
And the
Maybe last one question.
Okay. As a politician, I have to ask you a question about politics and the situation in the United States. You talked a lot about companies, you talked about actors, about singers, and so my question is, do you see as an expert in the United States any politicians that use social media for their brands? And maybe you can tell us how this is working in the US election campaigns.
Oh, man. Well, listen, I probably don't have to tell you about the political situation in the US, and I would say that the last election was proof that social media works when it comes to politics, and the fact that you can garner an audience and get them to move and galvanize around an idea based on social media. And even now, we can still see that lots of politicians are using that platform not only to get their message across, but to get to the younger voters, which is super important, right? Because we know that not every politician can hit every single city. You can't necessarily get your message out to every single person and let them hear your passion and your power. But what a time to be alive, that we can have these platforms that allow us to connect so directly with our constituents that they'll be able to understand our politics. And oh, by the way, our constituents can also ask our politicians the tough questions that they need answers to.
Any politicians that you like want to point out? I mean, I hear about Mayor Pete all the time.
Oh yes, I know. I'd like Mayor Pete.
Yeah? I mean, but is anybody else that's standing out that you think is doing a good job?
I mean, there's so many people. I mean, listen, I think Stacey Abrams, she ran for office in Georgia. She was the first black woman running for office, for a big office there, and she used social media as a way to get a lot of support. I personally think that the election was robbed from her, but you know what? That's a whole nother conversation to have on another day.
All right. Last question from the bar.
May I ask another one? How could we build a better, more gender-balanced network?
Ooh, yes, gender balance. I mean, listen, I am all about women's empowerment and making sure that we have equal opportunities for women and people of color all across the planet. Here's the real challenge, though, and I've said it before, I'll say it right now in front of everybody, which is that before I used to say that women needed to step up to the plate more, that we needed to be more aggressive, that in terms of pay equity, we needed to ask for the big numbers and not be afraid to do it. But then I changed my tune about a year ago and said, you know what, I think it's time for the men to do it. Men, you step up. You help the women to make sure that when you're looking at hiring practices, that you are not biased. That if you are biased and you find that you've hired a lot of men in the last year, I challenge you to only hire women in the next year, and then we'll see some change.